some polka music, okay?
I'm gonna play
These people want to hear some polka music.
You can't have a Polish wedding without polka music! No, would you leave it alone? Keep your How can you have a Polish wedding without any Polish music? Keep your hands off my equipment! It ain't a Polish wedding without a polka!
Mind literally creates our body.
But it all starts in the cell. And who gives the cells the order? The orders come from the neural net in our brain, which are based on the experiences and information that we've logged in there. And we use a certain box of solutions to our life that causes chemistry to take place. So in order for us to change the chemistry, we would literally have to change the neural net, which means we'd have to change our identity, which means we'd have to change our attitude, or change the way in which we interact with our environment. And every time we keep being the same person and keep experiencing the same attitudes, all we're doing is reinforcing ourselves as our identity.
I once did a little gig in a women's prison of, they're all heroin addicts, and by teaching them that they have receptors for the heroin, and that the more heroin that they take, their ability to make their own internal endorphins, their own internal heroin, basically starts to decline. And then the receptors start to become subsensitive, or there's actually less of them. So there's these actual changes, and then this new information about how less brain cells are being made, so that people get kind of, in all addictions, they get stuck in old patterns.
The person's mental life becomes dominated by pain, such that everything that they perceive is colored by the pain. And sometimes every way that they react and everything that they do becomes all about their pain.
One of the things about receptors is they change in their sensitivity. If a given receptor for a given drug or internal juice is being bombarded for a long time at a high intensity, it will literally shrink up. There will be less of them, or it will be hooked up in such a way that it is desensitized or downregulated. So the same amount of drug or internal juice will elicit a much smaller response.
we're bombarding the cell with the same attitude and the same chemistry over and over again on a daily basis, when that cell finally decides to divide, when it produces a sister cell or a daughter cell, that next cell will have more receptor sites for those particular emotional neuropeptides and less receptor sites for vitamins, minerals, nutrients, fluid exchange, or even the release of waste products or toxins. Now, all aging is a result of improper protein production. What happens when we age? Our skin loses elasticity. Well, elastin is a protein. What happens to our enzymes? We don't digest as well. What happens to our synovial fluid? Those are proteins. They become brittle and stiff. What happens to our bones? They become thin. So all aging is a result of improper protein production. So then the question arises, does it really matter what we eat? And does nutrition really have an effect if the cell doesn't even have the receptor sites after 20 years of emotional abuse to even receive or let in the nutrients that are necessary for its health?
If we know the thoughts of a person, we will best know them by their addiction, their continuous, over 24 hours, in a continuum of what emotions they display in their body. We shall know their thoughts.
I hate you.
We never, ever reincarnate to the I love you so much people. We always reincarnate to the situations of why we hate ourselves.
Hate you. You get it? You suck! Look at you! You're ugly! You're worth nothing! You get it all! I hate you!
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
No one has ever came along and ever given you sufficient, intelligent knowledge about your beautiful self, how you work from the inside out. Why do you have addictions? Because you have nothing better. You have dreamt of nothing better because no one has ever taught you how to dream better.
There's data now that when people are addicted to, whether it's cocaine, heroin, nicotine, alcohol, all of them seem to share a property of blocking the growth of new brain cells. And yet, it can completely come back when the drug taking has stopped.
Oh, poopy.
If you don't see the traps, you have to go through the crap until you see the traps. Because if you don't see it, it's your only teaching machine. It's your only way for you to come to understand something new. So the universe brings these things to your door, and there is learning in them for you if you are willing to reflect upon them and think beyond the rigid mindset.
Can I? Wow. Borrow some toothpaste? Thanks.
When I talk about we disappearing, I don't mean that we physically disappear. What I mean is that we move out of the area of the brain that has to do with our personality, that has to do with our association to people, our association to places, our association to things and times and events. We don't exist in the associative centers in our brain that reaffirms our identity and reaffirms our personality.
We now have science to back up what our thoughts do and how they make our bodies weak. A lot of scientists who are actually studying this with behavioral kinesiology and other ways, showing that thoughts make your body weak. And thoughts pretty much create your reality. They create what you're going to think about yourself. If you're fat but you think you're wonderful, you'll be wonderful. But most women we're compared all the time with impossible images from Barbie to models, and so we think that our whole currency is how we look and how other people are going to perceive us, and we're always up against impossible standards.
What is relative to their own emotional addiction are movies and dramas and news and all the media that is so beautiful today, and providing people with experiences without having to be there. And yet, that does not define human greatness.
They're so hypnotized by their environment through the media, through television, through people living and creating ideals that everybody struggles to become, that no one can actually become in terms of physical appearance and definitions of beauty and valor that are all illusions, that most people surrender and live their life in mediocrity. And they may live that life, and the soul may never really, their desire may never really rise to the surface, so they may want to be something else. But if it does rise to the surface, and they ask themselves if there is something more, or why am I here? What is the purpose of life? Where am I going? What happens when I die? They start to ask those questions. They start to flirt and interact with the perception that they may be having a nervous breakdown. And in reality, what they're doing is that their old concepts of how they viewed their life in the world start to fall apart.
That's why very few people make this journey, because it's deeply unsettling. All of the molds that we have lived by have to be broken, and we have to liberate ourselves in this way. And sometimes there's an awkward period between the comfort that we knew before and the real state of comfort when we are the Lord of our being, which follows that interval of chaos. Most people, when they get into the chaos, give up hope and go back to the old false securities. They get to live a reasonable life, and they get to die in some sort of peace, but they haven't advanced spiritually at all in that experiment that we call the life.
we're in completely new territory in our brain. And because we're in completely new territory, we're rewiring the brain, literally reconnecting to a new concept. Then ultimately, it changes us from the inside out. If I change my mind, will I change my choices? If I change my choices, will my life change? Why can't I change? What am I addicted to? What will I lose that I'm chemically attached to? And what person, place, thing, time, or event that I'm chemically attached to that I don't want to lose because I may have to experience the chemical withdrawal from that? Hence the human drama.
This life is but a page in an enormous book in which we will always be who we are, but always with the inherent needling of ambitious pursuit, a pursuit that takes us from the boring tedium of self-reflection, of self-hate, into self-creation of new dreams. And we are ambitious gods. It's the only planet in the Milky Way that has habitation that is steeped in enormous subjugation of religion. You know why that is? Is because people have set up right and wrong.
I did say there is no right and wrong. Does that mean that it's a free-for-all? Absolutely not. I mean, the problem that I have with right and wrong in those categories is not that I want a free-for-all, but that right and wrong doesn't go nearly far enough.
They have never sinned. They have never wronged. Wronged, yes, in moral confrontations with society, but that's their adversity. That's why they're here. To wrong, to learn, search, and use the wisdom of that to create yet greater dreams.
There's nobody keeping records up there. The records are here, and I'm going to have to deal with them. That's far more painful than a record-keeping God up in the skies. So anyone who's setting out on the path of enlightenment will be absolutely impeccable in everything that they do. Is it because of fear of damnation? No. Or of the punishment of God, or because I have sinned and haven't got forgiveness? No, no, no. I mean, these are all excuses that keeps us away from the real problem. The really enlightened person will see every action has a reaction with which I must deal. And if I'm wise, I'm not going to do stuff that will cause me to have to face it and resolve it and balance it in my soul later. That's the real criterion.
That God, or the fundamental level of reality, depending on what people describe, it really, I mean, theoretically, it should be everywhere. It's something, you know, exactly how it would manifest or how God would manifest in the world is a more complicated issue. But I think that certainly from a more traditional religious perspective, people have kind of gotten away from God, the person.
There's been a great shift from God up there or out there or in there, wherever, to the God within. And that's an improvement, but we don't want to get some idea that God can be within and still be separate, which is what most people think. They think the God within is like some of those alien movies, you know, where some being breaks out from my chest. God is not within in that stupid sense. What it means is that in God we live, move, and have our being, that we ourselves, in fact, are divine.
What's the relation between my God self and your God self? There is no relationship because it's only one God self. It's in both of us.
All people are divine people. Is it not ironic that all would say that this is the voice of the devil, or that this is heresy? If this is heresy, then what is promised to everyone is an imbuement with God that is inseparable.
Knowledge allows the brain to begin to become wired, and we will begin to see what has always existed, but because we live in those routine automatic programs, we're unable to see because we're processing mind from the familiar. To learn knowledge means we're learning new things. And to learn new things means we're gathering information and creating the circuitry now to begin to develop the sensitivity, to begin to see things for the first time.
There is enormous potential to change the kind of behaviors and characteristic patterns that we've fallen into. In fact, if you've listened and have remembered anything that I've said, your physiology is different than it was before that. That is something that Eric Kandel, the recent winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Science, said very eloquently at a talk, that basically memory has been encoded, your genetic structure has changed, and while we previously would talk about the nervous system as this very rigid thing that didn't have much capacity for change, we now know that on many levels that isn't true. And actually there's a tremendous amount of plasticity, which basically means ability to change within the nervous system.
And if you look at the structure of the human brain in detail, you see that it's specifically designed, it's carefully engineered to experience the unified field, to experience the unity of life.
We're all connected. I mean, I think the most fundamental thing is we're all connected by an energy field. We swim in a sea of light, basically, which is the zero-point field. And I say, first of all, you get away from the whole idea of separateness, because separateness is the biggest problem of the world now.
You take this notion of an entangled universe and you apply it to human experience, because human experience is part of the universe as well. And then you say, well, let's assume that experience is entangled, then how would it manifest? And we can start going through ways in which it could manifest. If there's a connection with another mind, we call it telepathy. If there's a connection to some other object somewhere else, we'd call it clairvoyance. If there's a connection that happens to transcend time, we'd call it precognition. If there's a connection in which my intention is expressed out in the world some way, we might call it psychokinesis or distant healing or something of that sort. So you can go through a list of perhaps 12 kinds of psychic experience that have gotten labels over the years, like telepathy, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
People ask, why are you so interested in the Planck scale, the very ultimately tiny in terms of spirituality? Because obviously spirituality is out there, it's everywhere. And the answer is that, yes, the Planck scale is the ultimately small, but it's also everywhere. Wherever you go, there it is. And because it's holographic, it repeats at different scales, like fractals, throughout the universe.
I would say that what quantum physics is to the 20th century, whatever is going to be the new bridging of science and spirituality, that will be to the 21st century.
We are all creating the future. We are all creating what is outside of us. None of us are innocent in that regard. If there's something out there we don't like, we can't really turn our backs on it, because we're co-creators somehow or other. And we have to do the right things to try to get the future that is best for all of us.
We have talked so far about the freedom of our own personal life and quantum physics, that we are freeing and freeing and freeing our reality to ultimate realities. Yes, of course they exist. But after we have accomplished them, what then? What next? When do we make the shift from me to one? When are we the subconscious mind? When are we the knowledge of the one, transpersonal self?
When you start to realize what your true nature is, there is no question, there is no answer anymore. And there is just sudden realization. Now you come back from the rabbit hole and you start to perform in this world of illusion and wonder and magic with that understanding that you're never going to die and you were never born.
Choice by consciousness out of these possible events, the actual event of experience comes in. And so, for the first time, science encounters free will. Consciousness is free because there is no mathematical description of the subject. Only objects can be described mathematically, and only to the extent that there are possibilities. The question still remains paramount: who is the chooser?
Are all realities existing simultaneously? Is there a possibility that all potentials exist side by side?
Welcome to Flatland, a world of only two dimensions. Only forwards and backwards, left and right. In this world, there is no up and no down.
I said to Ray, "Where's Dottie?" He said, "Well, she's out in line."
Where's that from? What the bleep is that thing? Huh?
In this world, the two-dimensional beings that live here have no concept of three-dimensional objects. These two-dimensional flatlanders have no understanding of cubes, spheres, tetrahedrons, or yours truly. From their 2D perspective, my 3D finger looks something like this.
What the flatter is that?
Hello, little circle. Fear of the unknown. Or should I say, not yet known. It's a puzzle. If we see only what we know, how does anyone ever see anything new? The unknown. How do we ever get out of our box? Hello, little circle. Don't be afraid.
Who said that? Where are you?
This is always the tricky part to explain. I am in another dimension, another space. I am above you.
No, never use that word.
What word?
The A word.
Above?
It's forbidden.
Well, what do you think it means?
I don't know, and I don't want to know. You can be severely punished if you use that word. Are you a ghost?
I hope not. I just have a different perspective than you do. I can see things in a way you can't yet.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, okay, you have a safe hidden in your pantry. And inside it, you have 12 coins, a will, and a passport.
How did you know that? What are you? Are you a god?
Well, no more than you. You see, since I am above you, in the third dimension, I can see inside things in your world.
Third dimension? You are a crazy ghost. There's only two. Look.
So, if I were to touch the inside of your stomach, how would I do that?
Well, you'd have to cut through my skin. Otherwise, it's impossible. Stop! Stop!
Ready for more?
More what?
Dimensions.
Oh.
Directions.
No. Yes, but there aren't any. More? What will happen to me? What will I become?
You'd have to become it, to know.
Okay.
Excellent.
I never knew.
Isn't it funny? That which we are most afraid of is what thrills us the most.
That has the effect of randomizing their X spins, and nothing else interesting happened to them after that. Okay. Good. It's an easy way to get a laugh here.
So you can't ask them their opinion, because you know what they're going to tell you. You're starting to act different. I liked you better the other way. And that's a great sign that you're making a change.
You can edit that, though, if you had to, though, couldn't you? Who can do the Heimlich?
Okay, are we rolling?
ギリシャの哲学者タレスが紀元前前に、言ったように、水は万物の源であるというふうに、私は信じている。
I study quantum physics. I sometimes teach it. I have written a book on quantum physics and many books explicating the meaning of quantum physics.
After my PhD from Harvard, I went to CERN, the European Laboratory for Particle Research, but perhaps I'm best known for the discovery of the now famous N=1 locally supersymmetric flipped SU5 grand unified field theory.
Don't make the mistake of thinking that the scientific community is scientific.
Ponder that for a while. What did I say? What are you going to do with that? A bite! You took a bite out of nowhere!